Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work, and the topic of the next press briefing is press conference of the Ukrainian World Congress and Ukrainian Congress Committee of America missions on the second round of presidential elections in Ukraine. Our guests are Eugene, Czolij, head of the Ukrainian World Congress mission, Andrei Futey, deputy head of the Ukrainian World Congress mission, head of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America mission. Welcome. So the Ukrainian World Congress International Observation Mission to Ukraine's 2019 elections. I repeat, I'm Eugene Czolij, head of the Ukrainian World Congress Mission, and we observe Ukraine's 2019 elections. The Ukrainian World Congress International Observation Mission to Ukraine's 2019 elections is the third largest international observation mission to the presidential election in Ukraine after the observation missions of the Office for Democratic Initiatives and Institutions and the Human Rights of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, and the European Network of Election Monitoring Organizations, NMO. The UWC mission has registered 249 short-term observers with the Central Election Commission of Ukraine. They come from 18 countries, namely Australia, Belarus, Canada, Georgia, Estonia, Ireland, Canada, Lithuania, Moldova, Germany, Poland, Romania, Slovenia, the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, USA, France, Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Sweden. The UWC mission has also closely cooperated with the observation mission of its member organization, Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, or UCCA, which registered 88 STOs with the CEC. Together, the missions of the UWC and the UCCA registered 337 STOs with the CEC. The UWC and UCCA missions monitored the electoral process in 19 oblasts of Ukraine, namely in Vinnytsia, Volynska, Dnipropetrovska, Donetska, Zhytomyrska, Zakarpatske, Zaporizhsky, Ivano-Frankivska, Kyivsky, Lvivsky, Mykolaievsky, Odessa, Poltavska, Sumska, Ternopilska, Khersonska, Cherkasska, Chernivtska, and Chernigivsky. In addition, UWC and the UCCA missions monitored the voting in Ukraine's diplomatic missions in 25 countries, namely in Argentina, Belarus, Bulgaria, United Kingdom, and Denmark, Estonia, Israel, Spain, Italy, Kazakhstan, Canada, Latvia, Moldova, Germany, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, and United States of America, Turkey, France, Hungary, Croatia, and Switzerland. The UWC and UCCA missions are the only international missions monitoring the electoral process in Ukraine's diplomatic missions around the world. The conclusions of the UWC mission are based upon direct observations by its SDOs and meetings held with high-level officials from state institutions, media, civil society, and the international community. The UWC mission has analyzed the presidential election in light of Ukraine's international commitments to democracy, the rule of law, freedom of speech, and fair and free elections. UWC STOs recorded very few irregularities. The difficulty for elderly and physically disabled people to access polling stations located on second and third floors remains an issue. But these isolated irregularities didn't impact the results of the elections. The biggest obstacle of this election was the brutal hybrid aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, which is ongoing for over 5 years and includes military aggression in the east of Ukraine and the illegal occupation of Crimea. In the view of that, Ukrainian citizens could not vote in the territories occupied by the Russian Federation in the Donbas and Crimea. Therefore, the governing authorities of Ukraine helped ensure that internally displaced persons from the Donbas and Crimea could vote in the election by simplifying the procedure for changing a voter's election precinct. Due to the risks and threats to the election and the impossibility of guaranteeing the security of voters in the Russian Federation, the CEC decided not to open any election precincts in that country. However, the citizens of Ukraine residing in the Russian Federation could exercise their constitutional right to vote in diplomatic missions of Ukraine located in Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Finland. The governing authorities of Ukraine made considerable efforts to ensure that the election would be transparent and conducted on the highest level without the use of administrative resources for the support of any one candidate. The law enforcement agencies of Ukraine also successfully protected the electoral process despite the ongoing hybrid aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. Voters were able to express their will on election day. The CEC statistics confirm a voter turnout surpassed 62%. This means that Ukrainian voters have a high level of trust in the electoral system, which is another important step in the development of democracy in Ukraine. On the basis of the monitoring results of the UWC mission, the 2019 presidential election in Ukraine has met international standards for the conduct of democratic elections. These preliminary observations are delivered prior to the completion of counting and tabulation, the announcement of preliminary and final results, and adjudication of possible complaints and appeals. The UWC mission will publish a comprehensive final report offering recommendations for potential improvements to the electoral process and in particular two. First one, provide for the debate of the presidential candidates to be held at least 1 week prior to voting day, and not a few hours before the day of silence. Second, legislate the repeal of the day of silence as the outdated procedure, which in particular does not take into account the significant role of social media that has no boundaries. Third, stipulate that judicial contestation of decisions of election commissions will be completed in such a manner so that the CEC could fulfill its mandate in accordance with the electoral law. Fourth, ensure equal conditions for the candidates for the presidency of Ukraine in the media space, which would include equal time and uniform representation of the candidates. The UWC mission expresses its gratitude to the Ukrainian people for their hospitality during its work, particularly on the 21st April 2019, the day of the monitoring of the second round of the 2019 presidential election in Ukraine. Also, starting 1st of March of this year, 122 long-term observers of UWC have been monitoring media in 15 languages for evidence of disinformation with respect to Ukraine generally and the presidential election specifically in 28 countries of the world, namely Australia, Azerbaijan, Argentina, Belgium, Brazil, Greece, Estonia, Spain, Italy, Kazakhstan, Canada, Latvia, Lebanon, Mozambique, Moldova, Germany, United Arab Emirates, Poland, Portugal, Serbia, Slovakia, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, United States of America, and Ukraine, France, Croatia, Czech Republic, and Switzerland. The UWC mission will be presenting its media monitoring interim report during a press conference on the 24th of April 2019 at 10 at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Once again, I thank you for your attention, and now I give the floor to Andrei Futey. He is the president of Ukrainian Congress Committee of America and the head of the UCCA mission to Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Czolij. Ukrainian Congress Committee of America is the largest representative organization of the Americans of Ukrainian descent. It is one of the few non-governmental organizations and the only Ukrainian American organization registered at the Central Electoral Committee of Ukraine. Let me remind you that the presidential elections were taking place at the backdrop of the challenges to territorial integrity of Ukraine and its sovereignty as a result of the aggression that goes on in Donbass and the hybrid warfare in Ukraine. The elections couldn't take place in the Crimea and some districts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast that are out of control, were out of control of Ukrainian authorities. The Ukrainian Congressional Committee praises the efforts of the Ukrainian government that made its utmost in order to provide the Ukrainian voters the will of expression, their free expression. The mission has registered very few violations. Those that have been registered have not had any systemic nature and have not affected the results of the elections. Some of our observers expressed their concerns about the location of the polling stations on the second and third floors of the premises where the voting took place. 87% of the international observers registered by the Ukrainian Congressional Committee that were working together or jointly with the Ukrainian World Congress at both stages of the voting, both rounds of the voting, communicated that the process of the casting the ballots was transparent and corresponded to the democratic standards. Our groups of short-term observation, 97% of the polling stations performed their functions either well or very well, which is a very high level of productivity for any electoral process institutions. The UCC confirms that the international standards were met in the course of the second round of voting, and it is a reflection, an exact reflection of the will of the Ukrainian electorate. Probably these were the best organized elections after the Ukrainian independence was proclaimed in 1991. Ukrainian World Congress supports Ukraine's people aspiration to continue to be free and independent people, and wishes the newly elected president to exert further efforts in order to instill democratic standards in Ukraine. We are going to stay together with the Ukrainian people in its efforts, including, first of all, the endemic corruption in this country that would provide the further development of Ukraine's democratic development of its democratic institution. We are going to protect Ukrainian language, Ukrainian identity and culture, and at the end, Ukrainian World Congress thanks all the members of its delegation who spent voluntarily their time and money for their participation in the observation process. Their adherence to these principles earns them respect and praise. Thank you, Andrew. In case you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen. Institute Liberalism and Ristuk. My questions are as follows. What are your assessments of the political struggle in Ukraine? There was a step towards democracy result as the outcome of this relations, but also, could you please tell us who were those people specifically? Because there were 300 people. They represent the largest Ukrainian diaspora organization. Well, thank you. On your first question, I believe that in our recommendations that we set out in our report, we recommended that the debates be the debates where some programs, some platforms, political platforms are discussed. But certainly the debates themselves depend mostly on the wishes and views of the candidates. We, though, think that the timing of the debates, preferably in our view, the debates should not be held on the last day before the voting day. And these debates could also involve maybe some experts so that the rank and file Ukrainians could have some time in order to think over what was said by the candidates in the course of the debates. Therefore, that's these recommendations we included in our interim report, and in our conclusive report we would also recommend the timing of the debate at least 1 week before the voting day. Speaking about our observers, we oftentimes say that the Ukrainian diaspora are a part of, an integral part of Ukrainian people, and during the voting campaign, electoral campaign, we were trying to prove that, not taking into account only the fact that many of the American Ukrainians were celebrating the Easter Day yesterday, therefore they left their families, couldn't take their families and or leave them, and for some people, it took many hours to get to Ukraine, to take part in the observation and then get back to their own country. But one woman from Australia, for example, she arrived here for the first round of voting. And the day before voting, she went to the area where she was supposed to visit a polling station, and she walked there for some time in order to study the terrain, so to say. And the next day, from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. she spent at the polling station, and the next day she came to me and said, I don't feel my legs anymore, I'm so tired, but I'm going to take part in the second round of voting. And she came indeed for the second round, and she said that she covered all the expenses for her flight from Australia to Ukraine and stay here, the hotel and expenditures. I took that from the money that I allocated for my pension savings, as my pension savings. That's, in my view, in my view, is a sign of how the people who consider themselves to be Ukrainians would like, with their practical work, participate in this process of nation building in Ukraine. If there are no questions, then we would like to ask our participants and wrap up our press conference. We have here, and Mr. Volodymyr Kistanek specifically has a few copies of our interim report. So if you need any hard copies, please